offering myself at Bhagavan's divine lotus feet, esteemed elders, and my dear brothers and sisters, a loving Sai Ram to all of you. On this most auspicious occasion of Sri Vinayaka Chaturthi, this evening we have Sri Bishu Prusti from the Radio Sai Global Harmony unraveling the lessons from the primordial principle. Hailing from the state of Odisha, Bishu joined the Sri Sathya Sai Higher Secondary School 2 decades back as a 11th standard student. Thereafter, he continued his education in Bhagavan's University, pursuing his BCom honors from the Vrindavan campus and his master's in business administration from the Prashanti Nilayam campus. In the year 2000, Swami sent him to get trained in hospital information systems, and consecutively, he served for a year in the Sri Sathya Sai Institute of Higher Medical Sciences, Whitefield, in the Systems Department. Later, his life took a different turn, with Swami directing him to join the Radio Sai Global Harmony, where he has been serving for more than 10 years now. At the Radio Sai, he writes and edits for the Radio Sai website, as well as contributes to the production of variety of radio programs. He is hosting 2 live programs every Thursday, Radio Sai Bhajan Classroom and Outside Inside Deep Inside. He is also the host of many Radio Sai serials like Fleeting Moments, Lasting Memories, which are the conversations with former students of Bhagavan, and The Tryst with Divinity, which are interactions with the devotees. He is also blessed to be a Prashanti Mandir Bhajan singer. I now invite Sri Bishu Prusti to enlighten us on the theme, Lessons from the Primordial Principle. Sri Bishu Prusti. Jai Sai Ram.
एकदन्ताय विद्महे वक्रतुण्डाय धीमहि तन्नो दन्तिः प्रचोदयात्. Salutations to the single-tusked one. We meditate on the beautiful form of the one with the curved trunk. May the one-tusked one bless us. May he guide us. I offer my most prayerful and grateful salutations at the lotus feet of our most merciful, beloved Bhagwan, respected elders, dear brothers and sisters, loving Sai Ram to one and all. I started with the Ganesh Gayatri, Ekadantaya vidmahe vakra tundaya dhimahi tanno dantif prachodayat. And as I was meditating on this particular mantra, what occurred to me is, from the 3 lines of this mantra, 2 lines are dedicated only to the tusk of the elephant. already the first line talks about the one with the single tusk, ekadantaya vidmahi. And again the last line, tanna danti prachodayat, again it refers to the one with one tusk. I thought there are so many other attributes of Vinayaka, there are so many other attributes of Gajanana. It could have been tanno mangaladayaka prachodayat, it could have been tanno mandahasa vadana prachodayat, tanno mushika vahana prachodayat, tanno modaka priya prachodayat, but why only tanno danti prachodayat? And as I sat to think, what occurred to me is, if you look at the beautiful face of Lord Ganesha, actually the tusk is an odd thing there. The tusk, one of the tusks is broken. And it actually takes away the symmetry from his face. Okay, if he had two harmoniously angled tusks, which adds to his beauty and majesty, we laud the tusk, we praise the beauty of the form. But it is not so. Actually, one of the tusks is not there, but still we hail and laud the single-tusked one. Why is it so? It is because Ganesha was so engrossed in doing God's work, he was so fully engaged in the service of humanity, he was so fully taken in by the task of writing the Mahabharata, he was so fully into the work that was entrusted to him with so much dedication that he did not have a single moment to pause. When the pen broke, when the stylus broke, he just took his tusk, broke, and he continued to write. He did not want to rest. When God gives you a task, you should know no rest. To me, that is lesson one. If you are truly, genuinely engaged in God's work, in the work of serving humanity, you want no rest. When Hanuman was flying across the oceans, in the search of Mother Sita, Mount Mainak comes from below, from the ocean, and says, Hanuman, you have such a stupendous task to undertake, you need some rest. Why don't you just, relax for a while, feast on the beautiful fruits that are there on the trees, just rest for a while in the shade that I have in the jungles on my mountain. But Hanuman says, no. How can you ask me to do that? How can I pause? I am engaged in Rama Karya. I am engaged in the work entrusted to me by Lord Rama. To think of rest is a sin. When we are engaged in God's work, all we can hope for and want is perhaps change of work. As Bhagavan says, change of work is rest. You take up many jobs so that all the time you are engaged. You don't waste a single second, because empty mind, as Swami says, is a devil's workshop. We all know it. So to me, that is one striking lesson from the single-tusked one. And you look at the story, look at Ganesha, he's writing the Mahabharata, and suddenly when the pen broke, he could have perhaps felt, oh, this pen broke, where do I get another pen? Oh, maybe there's a twig here, maybe there's a stick here, maybe there's a bamboo here, oh, maybe I can take Vyasa's pen. No, he didn't think like that. He did not think like that. Ganesha just spontaneously broke his tusk without a second thought. And we know for the elephant how important is the tusk, how much beauty and majesty and it adds to its personality. But Ganesha did not think, oh my God, okay, I'm engaged in God's work, but you know what, I can't break my tusk. I mean, I will look so odd. So many people look at me. I just cannot have a disfigured face. He did not think like that. He felt, I am engaged in God's work, and I have to do my best. I have to give my best. For an elephant, the tusk, as I was telling you, is such an integral part of its form, of its personality. We all know how even today, elephants are poached and killed in the jungles of Africa for their tusk. Between 2010 and 2012, over 100,000 elephants in Africa lost their lives. The price of smuggled ivory has tripled in the last 4 years. It is a multi-billion-dollar illegal market. The tusk is such an important part of the elephant, but Ganesha did not have an issue breaking off his tusk, which is so precious to him. Why? Because when it comes to doing something for the Lord, when it comes to doing something, serving humanity, the work which is to help a larger section of society, I have to do my best. He wanted to offer his best. And to me, that is lesson 2. If you want to offer anything to the Lord, not let it be your best. It has to be your best. If you want to offer anything to the Lord, it has to be your best. If you want to offer anything to the Lord, it has to be the best of your talent. It has to be the acme of your creativity. It has to be the pinnacle of your prowess. It has to be the most productive moment of your day. It has to be the most precious of your resources. God is not a beggar. You don't give him what is discarded, useless, meaningless to you. God, Swami says, is bigger. If you call a scholar and he gives a beautiful music performance, and after that, when you want to reward him, instead of giving him a silk shawl, if you give him a 10 rupees towel that is used, what does it mean? What does it show about what respect we have for that person? When we want to give something to the Lord, it has to be something which we do it only for him, something in which we are unparalleled, something in which we derive the greatest satisfaction, something in which we do the best. When Swami asked Mr. Victor Kanu in 1989 in an interview room, he said, "Kanu, why don't you go to Africa, to Zambia, and start a Sai school?" Kanu said, "Swami, where will the money come from?" Swami said, "Sell your house." At that time, he was stationed in London. He was the High Commissioner of Sierra Leone, stationed in London. Swami said, "Sell your house." And his wife had the presence of mind. She said, "Swami, if the money is not enough," Swami said, "borrow from the bank." And Mr. Victor Kanu didn't have a second thought. He left the interview room, went straight to UK. He sold his house. He sold everything, pots, pans, curtains, bed sheets, everything. And he went to Africa. He went to Zambia. He did not know where he's going to set up the school, how he's going to do it. He had no experience. He had never, ever before gone to Zambia. But Swami told him he wanted to give it his best. And what came out of it? When he started the school, no one joined the school because it was unrecognized. And Swami told him, "I don't want you to set up a school in a city, in a metro. Set up a school in a rural area." And Swami indicated the area where there are no facilities in Africa. This is way back in the 80s. He had a Herculean task setting up the school, and he got only those children who were discarded by all the other schools. He took those children, and he and his wife started this school, and they poured so much of their time, their love, their energy, their resources, their experience, their expertise into this school that within few years, this school came to be known as the Miracle School of Africa. Today, it is the Miracle School of Africa. How did he do it? Because he wanted to give his best to the Lord. I have a Sunday, okay, so I have to meet a few friends and I have to read a few books, perhaps see a movie I've not watched for long, and then catch up with some other colleagues, and maybe I have 5-10 minutes left. That time we can do something for God. God does not want your discarded and useless and perhaps neglected part of your life. If we have to give anything to the Lord, like Ganesha, we have to give what is most precious to us. That shows how much we love him. That shows how much we respect him. When you give your best to the Lord in a clear manner, in a clear mind, with all your heart, then you see what the Lord makes of you. Just like he created a miracle in Africa, you have to give your best. You don't have to be apprehensive. You don't have to feel, oh my God, what will happen to me if I give this to the Lord? You only have to do it with all faith, all dedication, all sincerity, and see what the Lord makes out of you. Miracles will happen. Jai Ganesh, Jai Ganesh, Jai Ganesh Deva, Mata Jaki Parvati, Pita Mahadeva. Jai Ganesh, Jai Ganesh, Jai Ganesh Deva, Mata Jaki Parvati, Pita Mahadeva. Mata Jaki Parvati, Pita Mahadeva. Victory to Lord Ganesha, the darling son, Mata Jaki Parvati, Pita Mahadeva, the darling son of Mother Parvati and Lord Shiva. And if we look at the way Ganesha came into being, so one fine morning, Mother Parvati feels that there is this Nandi which is so loyal to Lord Shiva. Nandi is so focused on Parameshwara, he would never ever disobey the Lord. And even today, if you look at the temples, Nandi would always face the Lord. And they say, if you have any prayer to Lord Shiva, all you have to do is just say it in the ear of the Nandi, because the Nandi's eyes are always only on the Lord. So Mother Parvati thought, Lord Shiva has someone who is so focused on him. What about me? And so that morning, as she is having her shower, she takes a little turmeric that she applies on her divine body, and from that turmeric and a little clay, she gives shape to a beautiful boy, and then breathes life into this boy, and that is how is born Ganesha. That is how is born Gauri Nandana, Parvati Nandana, Parvati Tanaya. And when this boy is born, this boy is so resplendent, so bright, so illustrious, so valorous. Everyone is amazed at the sparkle that you see in his eyes, the radiance in his form. Anyone would say, yes, this boy has to be a divine child. It has to be something absolutely not of this world. It has to be from parents who are absolutely divine. Look at him. On one occasion, Swami was there with a few boys, and Swami asked these students who were sitting around him, who are you? And the boys said, Swami, we are your students, some of them said. Some others said, Swami, we are your property, Swami. Because Swami always says, my boys are my property, my students are my property. So he said, Swami, we are your property. The third said, Swami, we are your children, Swami. And Swami said, my children? No, you are not my children. And everybody was taken aback. I mean, here is Bhagwan who always told us that we belong to him, and in a single statement, he's just saying, you are not my children. You don't know what to say. You don't know how to react. And Bhagwan then said, see, if a child is born to a mother and father, the child will take on something from either the mother or the father. You would see the little one, either he would walk like the father or smile like the mother. Maybe he will have the intelligence like the father or the grace of the mother, or perhaps he would just have something about him. When you look at him, you know that, yes, there is something common between him or between her and her parents. Swami said, if you say that you are my children, then there has to be something common between you and me. If there is something common, then I can accept you as my children. Otherwise, how can I accept you as my children? If we say that we are the Lord's child, then we need to have something which when people see in us, they say, oh yes, I mean, there is something beautiful about him. There is something divine about him. To be a child of God like Ganesha is, we need to genuinely cultivate, demonstrate, and truly replicate in our lives those God-like attributes. We need not be an ocean of compassion like the divine, but we need to have at least a trace of selflessness. We need to have an inch of sacrifice. We need to have an iota of feeling the pain for the other. We need to have a heart which beats for the other. Only that which beats for the other is a heart. Otherwise, it is just an efficient lump of flesh. Can we call it a heart? Bhagwan said, Hridaya is Hrid plus Daya. Daya means compassion. Only that which beats for others is a heart. So if we say that we are child of God, if we are children of God, then there should be something about us when people see, oh, it is so nice talking to him. See how sweetly he speaks. See how lovingly he addresses us. See the manners. See his behavior. There is something divine about him. Only then, perhaps we can call ourselves children of God. We may not set up a school for the orphan children, but we can always educate the child of our servant maid. We can educate the son of a disadvantaged worker in the office. We may not set up a free clinic, but we can at least do something to ensure the health of our domestic help. A simple insurance plan which will take care of the health of this domestic help who is doing so much for me and my family. We may not set up a Anna Vastra Dana, a Nitya Anna Dana Padakam where you have to feed hundreds of villagers every day, hundreds of rural folk every day, but we can ensure that in our locality, there is at least one person who never goes hungry, who never goes thirsty because I exist, because I am there. We can at least do that. Then, perhaps, we can call ourselves the children of God. To be a child of God like Ganesha, we need to replicate in our lives those God-like attributes. To me, that is lesson 3. And now, mother has created this child and gives him this task of guarding her home as she refreshes and relaxes in the inner chambers. And it is at this point that Lord Shiva comes. We know the story, and Shiva wants to enter this premises, and Ganesha does not allow. And that is how the battle begins, a fierce battle. And Lord Shiva is surprised. Lord Shiva is stunned at the valor of this boy. Lord Shiva is the god of delusion. He's the one who does pralaya, but for once, Lord Shiva is totally bewildered. Who is this little one? He's so valorous, he's shaking even me. The legend says that Lord Shiva had to ask the help of Vishnu. So Vishnu had to come to rescue Lord Shiva so that he could fight this child. He did not want to kill this child. He wanted to fight. He did not want to kill because you are so beautiful, such a blessed child, but you are so adamant. But what was the power of this child? How was this child such a brilliant, illustrious, valorous son? What was it that was protecting him? The power of mother's love and protection is as formidable as the Lord's love and protection. It was Mother Parvati's love. It was Mother Parvati's Shakti. It was Mother Parvati's aspects of Durga, Lakshmi, Saraswati, all. It was those powers which are protecting this child. It was the power of mother's love. And Bhagwan, it is for this reason that always said, mother is your first God. Your living deity in your house is your mother. What mothers can do, nobody else can. Sometime recently, there was a study done by the Harvard Grant Study. The study was called the Harvard Grant Study, which was done over 75 years. The intention was to unravel the secret to a fulfilling life. They want to know what is it that brings sustainable happiness to a person. And this is something that has to be done over a long period of time. So this study started sometime in 1940s and concluded a few years ago. And the study's most important finding is that the only thing that matters in our life for our happiness is not social class, it is not professional success, it is not our potential financial savings. Only thing that contributes to our happiness is relationships. Good, loving, warm relationships. And among all these relationships, the study concluded the most significant of all these relationships is the bonding that people have with their mothers. The study tabled its findings, and this is done in Harvard. It is done in the most scientific manner over 75 years, and they say that those people who have warm relationships with their mothers, these people, they earned more. They earned better. They had fatter paychecks. The people who had great relationship with their mother, they were effective in their professional environment. They were effective at work. Those people who had a warm, loving relationship with their mother for years, they were less likely to develop dementia as they grow old. The people who had poor relationship with their mother were more susceptible to dementia as they age. Another neuroscience research shows that children who are warmly nurtured by a mother, they have a bigger hippocampus. Hippocampus is the brain center for learning, the brain's vital center for learning. So those children who are brought up in a warm environment of love by the mother, they obviously have better IQ, better memory, and better response to stress. Not that we need modern science to tell us about the power of mother's love, but sometimes these facts do shake us and perhaps awaken us to what is the reality so obvious in front of us. We don't need any other better example for mother's love. Just look around the whole Sai Kulwant Hall, this Prashanthi Nilayam, if it has become an epicenter of spiritual revolution spanning the entire globe, if the Prashanthi Nilayam today has lakhs converging here for their peace, for their solace, if it is the center from where large mammoth projects, be it education, health, and water, has spurred and not only spurred, but they have in so many ways cascaded to so many countries, so many regions. If Prashanthi Nilayam is what it is today, Bhagwan used to always say that it is because of the love of Mother Ishwarama. It is because of the promise that Swami gave to Mother Ishwarama. It is because of the intent, pure intent of Mother Ishwarama, that here there has to be a school, there has to be a college, there has to be a water project. We don't need a better example of mother's love. So as the battle is going on between Shiva and Ganesha, Shiva, in his heart of hearts, he does not want to destroy this child because this child is so adorable. But he has no option. This child is so adamant. He's refusing to see, in a manner of sorts, the obvious. In front of him was Parameshwara. In front of him was the principle of Shiva. Shakti is inside and he's standing in between. He's not able to understand that Shiva has all the right to go inside. So finally, Shiva, with no option left, beheads Ganesha. And then Mother Parvati is inconsolable. But then Shiva says, Devi, please don't be so disheartened. Yes, you created him. Yes, you created him. But I will recreate him. I will recreate him. And that is how the head of an elephant facing the northern direction, which is about to die, is brought. And in the presence of Brahma, Ganesha receives the elephant head, and that is how is born Gajamukha, that is how is born Gajanana. And when the elephant head sits on this boy, when he has the intelligence and the wisdom of the elephant, that is when it occurs to him what a sin that he was committing. He was fighting with his own father. And that is when he surrenders. Bhagwan always used to say, elephant signifies intelligence, elephant signifies wisdom. And here, once Ganesha has the elephant head, he bows down in surrender at the feet of his father, at the feet of Lord Shiva. I remember so many occasions whenever Bhagwan used to talk about the elephant head of Ganesha, unmistakably he would bring up the tale of his beloved Sai Gita. And Swami used to say how Sai Gita always knew, even though she was 2 kilometers apart, she was 2 kilometers away in front of the hostel. Every time Bhagwan's car started from Sai Kulwant Hall, Sai Gita knew. She knew. We know the famous episode when Bhagwan wanted to go to Vrindavan. He had not told anyone. But once he reached the hostel, Sai Gita just pressed her trunk on the bonnet of Bhagwan's car and did not allow his car to move an inch until Bhagwan came out of the car, caressed her, pacified her, only so that, not so that he can go to Bangalore, only so that he can give her the confidence that he is indeed going back to Prashanthi Nilayam. That was, Bhagwan used to say, the Gaja Talivi, the intelligence of the elephant that we saw in Sai Gita. And whenever Bhagwan talked about the elephant head of Ganesha, he would always narrate the sterling virtues of Sai Gita and the attitude of gratitude, which is always an hallmark of elephant. So once Ganesha surrenders to Lord Shiva, that is when his arrogance, at one point in time when he was fighting, he did not, because of the powers, because of the prowess that he was endowed with, he refused to even for a moment think, who is this person with whom I am fighting? He was blind to the fact that the ultimate was actually standing in front of him. He was blind to that because he was so much up to the brim with his prowess. And once that head was gone and the elephant head came, then came surrender, then came humility, then came gratitude. And then see to what heights Lord Shiva took Ganesha. Once that surrender happened, Lord Shiva said, Ganesha, I'm so pleased with you. You are going to be the one who surpasses even me. You have to be the one whom everyone who needs knowledge has to worship. You have to be the patron of arts and crafts and knowledge of wisdom. You have to be the one people have to think whenever they undertake any auspicious task. You have to be the one who has to be the leader. You cannot have a leader above you. You will surpass me, Ganesha. You will be the primordial one, Ganapati Om. You are the primordial one because you surrendered. So Mother Parvati created Ganesha and Shiva recreated Ganesha. And when we think of our lives, isn't our lives to the same tale of creation and recreation? We are created by our mothers, but once we come into Bhagwan's fold, we are recreated. Aren't we recreated? Earlier, we used to think less of ourselves, but now we have learned to think of ourselves less. Earlier, we used to think that a great life is all about a great career, a good job, a high standard of living, about having the comforts of life. But now we know that life is not so much about a great career, but it is all about how much we care for others. Life is not about leading a higher standard of living. It's about leading a high standard of life, a life where we believe in simple living, in high thinking, in lovingly serving. He has recreated us. He has recreated each one of us. And that is a continuous process. We earlier thought that loving God is worshiping God by going to the temples, by doing the rituals, by doing a bit of charity, and by being fascinated by His miracles, by His powers. But now we know loving God is simply diligently living His words in our daily life. Loving God is when it becomes fashionable for us to follow His teachings. It's a cool thing for us. We love it. That is how He's recreated us. I was speaking to one former student of Bhagwan's University. After he cleared his entrance test for the IIT, which is the most toughest and prestigious engineering exam in India, his grandmother told him, why don't you go to Puttaparthi and have the darshan of Swami? It is by His grace that you have cleared this entrance test. And this boy says, what? By Baba's grace? I mean, I have toiled for it. You know how much I've struggled to pass this test? What do you mean that it is because of someone's grace that I've got this? But just not to displease his mother, he comes to Puttaparthi. This is sometime in 1996. And it was the time when Bhagwan was giving a series of discourses. And once he hears these discourses, and once he lives in this environment, once he basks in the peace of this place, once he subsumes himself in the sublimity that this place exudes, he feels, oh my God, I have to be here. I belong here. He told me when people join IIT, immediately their soul migrates to the US, and after 4 years, their body joins. But for him, he cleared IIT and his soul migrated to Prashanti Nilayam. After 4 years, his body joined. And today, he continues to serve in Bhagwan's institutions. Our mothers create us, but it is Swami who recreates us. If coming from an obscure town, from an underdeveloped district of an underdeveloped state, I stand here before you and share a few thoughts. It is only because he has recreated me. It is only because he's continuously recreating me, just as he's doing with each one of us. They say the best way to value a master is to master his values. The best way to value a master, if we value our master, then we have to master his values. And we know what are his values. Lord Ganesha is hailed as Vidya, Buddhi, Pradayaka. On one occasion, when Bhagwan came out of the interview room and there was a distinguished devotee in the portico, and for some reason, Swami went to one elder and Swami said, Buddhi ledu. And this distinguished elder who was there beside him also happened to get that blessing. Swami looked at him also and said, Buddhi ledu, no Buddhi. And this person, he was taken aback and he said, Swami, Buddhi and Siddhi, please, you have to grant me, Swami. Please give me Buddhi and also please give me some Siddhi, Swami. It is only you who can give. Swami said, Buddhi and Siddhi, I can't give. You ask Ganesha. See, I don't have a trunk. That is the primordial place that the Father gives to the Son, only because the Son surrendered. And in that discourse, where Bhagwan was talking about Ganesha being the Vidya, Buddhi, Pradayaka, Swami said, what is this Vidya? Is it the secular knowledge? Is it about physics, chemistry, biology? Is it that knowledge that Ganesha is the Adhipati of? Well, that is just mundane knowledge. What Ganesha truly can give us is Adhyatma Vidya, Vidyanam. That knowledge which makes us believe, which makes us realize, which makes us live with the feeling that every person we meet is a part of God. That knowledge, when we know that Ganesha is not someone who is sitting on the lap of his father in some Himalayan icy mountains, but Ganesha is the one who is within us as a higher intelligence, as our wisdom. That knowledge, that Vidya, where we will see the Lord in every speck of the universe, where we look at everything around us and we say, oh my God, how beautiful it is. The whole creation pulsates because He is there dancing in every neutron, proton. It is the Tandava, Shiva's Tandava that is happening. Only when we realize that, that is constant integrated awareness, and that is what is the real Buddhi, and that is what Ganesha will give us. That is the knowledge that we should seek from Ganesha. That is the true wisdom that we must pray and aspire for. Let us not limit the divine to a beautiful form. Yes, it is delectable, it is delightful to see the Lord in beautiful forms, but we must know that the Lord is not bound by these forms. He has just made them so that we feel happy, so that we learn, we have a medium to relate to Him. काहे बांधे साई को जन्म मरण के बंधन में, काहे बांधे साई को जन्म मरण के बंधन में। क्या इस सत्य को भूल गए, क्या इस सत्य को भूल गए कि साई बसे हैं कण कण में। काहे बांधे साई को जन्म मरण के बंधन में। अब साई के दर्शन होंगे, अब साई के दर्शन होंगे, अब साई के दर्शन होंगे। हर पल मन के दर्पण में साई बनकर सारथी संग रहेंगे अंतर मन में। अब ये जीवन धन्य हुआ है साई के प्रति समर्पण में। Let us dedicate every moment of our lives, every inch of our being, every speck of what we are made of at the lotus feet of this most merciful Lord. Let us make this beginning on this most auspicious day. Thank you so much for your patient listening.